YouTube? It's Alessia here and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be all about how to write great fight scenes. Now, fight scenes is something that so many writers struggle with. They are often afraid to even begin writing fight scenes. It's something that is very daunting to a lot of new and experienced writers, so I thought I would make a video on my best tips on how to write great fight scenes for your novel. Now, this applies to any genre that you are writing, whether it be contemporary fiction, sci-fi, supernatural fantasy. You can apply these tips to whatever genre you are writing in. So let's go ahead and get started. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and follow me on Instagram so you never miss a video. Tip number one is to not use technical language. I see a lot of new writers make this mistake and they're always so focused on using the correct technical phrasing to describe a fight, and the truth is that the average person won't even understand this technical phrasing because most people don't have a background in self-defense. So while it is great that you are using the proper language to describe a fight, the truth of the matter is that most people probably won't understand what a roundhouse kick is, or an uppercut, or a right cross. Instead of using technical phrasing like a roundhouse kick, use simpler language that all readers can identify with, such as "she delivered a powerful blow to the temple." Usually this simpler phrasing is much more effective anyways. Tip number two is to use fast pacing. So a lot of new and amateur writers often make this mistake, and I have definitely made this mistake in the past, but they often drag on their fight scenes and they stop to describe their character's internal monologue or what is happening around them, and that is just not realistic. When you are writing a fight scene, the key is to use fast pacing. Because in reality, a real fight would happen very fast. And realistically, your character will not have the time to stop and think about what their love interest is doing like 10 feet behind them. Only include what actually needs to be in the fight scene and what is relevant to the fight itself. Tip number three is to describe your character's 5 senses. A real fight is an incredibly sensory experience. Describing your character's 5 senses and what they are experiencing is a great way to relay exactly what is going on in the fight to your reader in a way that is exciting, recognizable, and realistic. So if you are writing a fight scene and your character is injured, describe the irony, metallic taste of blood, because that will be very realistic and understandable to all of your readers. Tip number 4 is to watch real fights on YouTube. And I do not mean to go and watch like fights in movies and TV shows, because usually fights in most movies are very unrealistic. However, there are tutorials on YouTube taught by real self-defense teachers that you can watch to get inspiration. But you have to remember that understanding the technical sequence of a fight really isn't the most important part about writing a fight. However, watching a karate demonstration on YouTube can be very helpful in visualizing a fight and is a great place to start, especially if you've never written a fight scene and are looking for some real inspiration. Tip number 5 is to be realistic about what your character can withstand. Now, this is a personal favorite tip of mine, but in so many books and movies and TV shows, a character will get really injured or really pummeled in a fight. They'll get like thrown to the ground or punched in the face, and they'll just snap right back and keep going. They'll get right back up and like continue joining the fight, which is not realistic whatsoever. In real life, if someone was punched in the face or thrown to the ground, they would definitely feel a lot of pain, and it would probably take them a few minutes to gather their bearings and to get back up. This realistic experience is exactly what you should be writing into your fight scene. So if your character gets thrown to the ground, Obviously, they're gonna have to recover and take some time, so don't make them, get right back up and join the fight. Definitely be realistic and think about, the trauma that they are experiencing to their physical body. This tip will, of course, vary depending on what your character is. So, for example, if you're writing contemporary fiction and your character is just a regular human and gets punched in the face, they will definitely get more injured than like a supernatural character who has like superhuman abilities. In my book series, for example, all of the characters are supernaturals, and because of that, they all have inhuman abilities and they have superior fighting skills. So when they get hurt, they would bounce back faster than a regular human, but within reason, of course. Every character has its limits. So, if one of my characters were to get stabbed, of course they are going to feel pain and they're not going to recover immediately. Tip number 6 is to use similes and metaphors to describe things that are going on in a fight. Similes and metaphors are a great way to describe what is going on in a fight in a way that is very recognizable and familiar to all of your readers. So instead of using technical jargon in my fights, I often make a comparison to something that already exists and something that all of my readers can be familiar with. For example, the throwing knife struck him like a bolt of lightning is much more exciting than the throwing knife struck him in the shoulder. So as you can see, just making a comparison between a throwing knife and a bolt of lightning really energizes the sentence and helps the reader clearly visualize what is going on. Tip number 7 is to use active voice instead of passive voice. I'll definitely do a whole video on active versus passive voice in the future, but right now all you really need to know is that active voice is a way of writing that is much more direct and just eliminates all unnecessary adverbs and phrases from a sentence. On the other hand, passive voice often slows down your writing by adding in unnecessary verbs and phrases and often bores the reader when not used properly. The sentence, "she had hit him hard," slows down your writing as opposed to the sentence, "she hit him hard." While both sentences are grammatically correct, you can clearly see that the second example really energizes the sentence and takes out the unnecessary word had. Tip number 8 is to listen to a badass playlist to get you into the writing mood. I've talked about this so many times, but using soundtracks can really help you with your writing, and I use different soundtracks just for different scenes throughout my series. So I have a soundtrack dedicated to writing fight scenes, and I have a soundtrack dedicated to writing sexy romantic scenes and stuff like that. And listening to like badass fight music really hypes me up and it gets me into the mood and headspace to write a good fight scene. I will leave my playlist that I use in the description box below if you want to check out my fighting playlist and write along with me. Tip number 9 is to read good fight scenes in your genre. It's always a good idea to draw inspiration from other authors in your genre that write really good fight scenes. However, you do want to make sure you are reading in your genre because a fight scene in contemporary fiction will look a lot different than a fight scene in like supernatural fantasy. When I want a source of inspiration, I always go and look at Cassandra Clare's fighting scenes, mostly because she's a great example of someone in my genre that writes fight scenes really well. She writes fight scenes literally all of the time, and her fight scenes are never overly technical, they're very sensory, and they're just really fast-paced and exciting to read, so I often refer back to her books whenever I am in a slump or whenever I'm getting ready to write a fight scene. So you should definitely do that for whatever you are writing, and I promise you it will help so much. Tip number 10 is to remember that less is always more. The reason that I think fight scenes are difficult for a lot of writers is because a lot of writers juggle with what to actually put into their fight scene, because ultimately it's just a struggle between description and what actually needs to go into the fight scene. As a writer, you ultimately have to assess and decide what actually needs to be in your fight scene to make it exciting and effective. And usually that means less is more. So write shorter, more direct sentences, take out, long character ramblings or monologues, and trust me, your fight scene will be all the better for it. Those are all of the tips I have for you today. Please comment down below which one was your favorite, and I will be back next Monday for a brand new video. Bye guys.